3 months after the divorce, he wasn't supposed to see her again. Not like this. Not with her belly rounded beneath a soft sweater. Not with her eyes bright, her mouth curved in a small private smile. Not walking through a busy shopping mall like she belonged to a different world. Lighter, freer, while her fingers were laced with another man's, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And definitely not on a day when he had sworn to himself he was back in control. Lorenzo Enzo De Luca had built his entire life on control. Not the kind that required shouting, not the kind that left bruises. Control that lived in his posture, his quiet authority, his stillness. The kind that made people lower their voices around him without understanding why. The kind that made rooms tilt toward him. He'd been walking toward a private elevator behind a boutique jewelry store, flanked by two men in black, more out of habit than necessity, when his world snapped sideways. He saw her, Sienna Hart, his ex-wife, the woman he'd signed papers to let go of 3 months ago, with a pen that had felt heavier than any weapon he'd ever held. She was halfway across the main corridor, near a wide glass railing that overlooked the lower level. Holiday displays still lingered in the mall. Soft lights, fake snow, oversized boughs, though it wasn't the season anymore. People drifted around them with shopping bags and coffee cups, living ordinary lives. The kind of ordinary Sienna had always said she wanted. For a heartbeat, Enzo didn't move. His entire body went rigid, like he'd been hit with something he couldn't see. Her hair was longer than he remembered, falling in loose waves over her shoulders. She wore a cream sweater and dark jeans, flat boots instead of heels. She looked comfortable. Her hand rested briefly on her belly as she laughed at something the man beside her said, and it wasn't a forced laugh. It came from her chest, warm and real. Enzo's chest tightened. Her belly, pregnant. His mind refused to accept it for the first few seconds. Like if he stared hard enough, it would flatten. Like the curve was an illusion created by the lighting, the angle, the sweater. But then she turned slightly and the curve was undeniable. Not huge, but clear. A new life carried in her body. A life she hadn't carried when she walked out of their home with nothing but a suitcase and a look in her eyes that had made him feel, for the first time, like he was losing her for real. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached, and then he saw the hand. Not her hand. His eyes knew her hand. He'd held it in bed when she couldn't sleep. He'd kissed her knuckles in the dark when he thought she was asleep. He'd wrapped his fingers around hers under tables at charity events when he needed her to ground him. It was the other man's hand, their fingers interlaced. Easy, familiar. Enzo's vision narrowed. The mall's noise fell away until all he could hear was the pulse in his ears, heavy and furious. His men said something. He didn't even register what. One of them shifted like he was about to step forward, but Enzo lifted a hand without looking, a sharp, silent command to stop. He started walking. He didn't plan it. He didn't decide. His body simply moved, pulled like a magnet toward the one thing he still couldn't accept living without. The distance between them closed too fast. Sienna and the man wandered past a luxury perfume store, pausing in front of a display that featured a new fragrance with a dramatic name. The man leaned in close to smell the tester strip, then held it toward Sienna with a playful grin. She leaned in too, close enough that her hair brushed his shoulder, then made a face like she wasn't impressed. He laughed, loud enough that a couple nearby turned to look. They looked happy. Enzo's stomach twisted. Not because she didn't deserve happiness, because she wasn't supposed to look like this without him. Because he'd always believed, stupidly, arrogantly, that if she ever left, she'd be broken for a long time. Instead, she looked like she'd been reborn, and she was pregnant. His steps slowed as he came within a few yards, close enough that he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the way her lips were softer than he remembered, the way her cheeks were fuller. His eyes dropped again to her belly, and his throat went dry. 3 months. 3 months since the divorce. His mind began to do the math like it could solve this with numbers. It was a cruel instinct, the kind that had kept him alive in a world where details mattered. But numbers didn't make sense. Because if she was far enough along that it showed, then no. Enzo's grip on reality tightened. The only thing he allowed himself to feel in that moment was rage, jealousy, heat that made his skin feel too tight. He saw the man say something else, and Sienna laughed again. Then the man reached up and brushed something off her hair, like a piece of lint or a stray strand. It was an intimate gesture, casual and protective. Enzo's chest flared. He stepped forward. "See." His voice cut through the mall noise like a blade. Sienna froze. She turned slowly, as if she already knew exactly who the voice belonged to, and had been hoping she'd never hear it again. Her eyes met his. For a second her expression was unreadable. Then something flickered, surprise maybe, or annoyance, or a brief flash of pain she quickly buried. The man beside her turned too, and when he saw Enzo, his eyebrows lifted in mild interest rather than fear. That annoyed Enzo more than it should have. Sienna's fingers tightened around the other man's hand, and Enzo saw it. The protective instinct, the claiming. She didn't let go. Enzo stopped in front of them, close enough now to smell her perfume. Something floral and clean, not the rich scent she used to wear when she was his wife. This one smelled like sunlight, like fresh linens, like a morning she didn't spend waiting for him to come home. His eyes went again to her belly, and his voice came out lower, rougher. "What is this?" Sienna blinked once. Enzo. Not a greeting, a warning. Enzo barely heard it. His gaze slid to the other man. "Who is he?" The man smiled, openly amused. He was tall, around Sienna's height, dressed in a fitted tan coat and sneakers. His hair was styled like he cared about it, and his face was handsome in a clean, bright way. He looked like someone who belonged in a magazine, not someone who should be walking next to Enzo's wife, ex-wife, like he had a right to her. Sienna's jaw tightened. "You don't get to ask me that." Enzo's nostrils flared. "I'm asking." The man's smile widened. "Ooh, he's intense." Enzo's eyes narrowed. The nerve. Sienna's shoulders squared. She stepped slightly in front of her companion, as if she was shielding him. It was a movement that struck Enzo in a place he didn't like, because he remembered being the one she used to stand close to, the one she used to instinctively lean toward. Now she was protecting someone else. Enzo leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet but dangerous. "Sienna, we need to talk." Her eyes flashed. "No, Enzo, we don't. We're done. That's why we're divorced." The word divorced hit like a slap, even though it was the truth. Enzo's gaze flicked again to her belly. His voice turned colder, sharper, to cover the sudden ache in his chest. "Is that his?" Sienna's face went still. The man beside her blinked, then looked between them like he'd just stumbled into the best show in the mall. Sienna's lips parted, but before she could speak, Enzo added, "Don't lie to me." Sienna's eyes hardened. "Don't talk to me like that." Enzo's hands curled into fists at his sides. He forced himself not to reach out, not to touch her, not to drag her into the nearest private room and demand answers until his lungs burned. This was a public place. Ordinary people walked around them, unaware of the storm standing near the glass railing. But Enzo couldn't breathe through it. He stared at her belly again. His voice dropped, almost hoarse. "How far along are you?" Sienna's chin lifted. "Enough." Enzo's laugh was sharp and humorless. "That's not an answer." The man beside her cleared his throat, stepping forward a half step, and Enzo's eyes snapped to him. "Hi," the man said brightly. Enzo cut him off. "I didn't ask you to speak." The man paused, then grinned wider. "Wow, okay. So we're doing that." Sienna shot her friend a look, but the man just winked at her, like he was enjoying this too much. Enzo's gaze remained locked on Sienna. "If you needed money, you could have..." Sienna's eyes went dangerous. "Don't." Enzo's voice rose, not loud, but edged. "Could have told me. You could have asked." "Asked you?" Sienna snapped, and for the first time, her composure cracked. "Like I asked you for attention, for time, for basic decency while we were married?" Enzo's throat tightened. He didn't have a clean answer to that. Sienna's chest rose and fell. She pressed a hand to her belly, breathing through something. Enzo's gaze softened for half a second at the gesture, then hardened again because he couldn't afford softness yet. Not until he knew the truth. The man, her friend, leaned in toward Sienna, murmuring something. She nodded once, then looked back at Enzo with a steady stare. "You're not entitled to my life anymore," she said. "You signed that away." Enzo swallowed. "And the baby?" Sienna's eyes flickered just briefly. Enzo caught it, that tiny crack. His heart slammed against his ribs. "She's pregnant," one of his men muttered behind him, too quietly for anyone else to notice. "Boss." Enzo didn't move. He didn't look away. His entire world had narrowed down to the curve of her belly and the way her eyes refused to give him what he wanted. The man beside her made a small sound, like a suppressed laugh, then covered it with a cough. Enzo's gaze snapped to him again. "Is something funny to you?" The man blinked innocently. "I mean, kind of. You're acting like she stole your throne." Sienna's lips twitched, barely. Enzo saw it and it hit him like an insult. She was almost smiling. At this. At him. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Sienna, don't play games." She held her ground. "I'm not." Enzo's eyes dropped again, and his stomach tightened with something that wasn't just jealousy now. It was fear. Because if that baby was his, then he'd lost more than a wife. He'd lost a family, and he hadn't even known. His voice came out rough. "Tell me." Sienna's eyes held his for a long, tense moment. Then she looked away first, turning her head slightly toward the man beside her, as if seeking calm from him. Enzo hated that too. "Enzo," she said softly, and the softness confused him more than anger. "You don't get to storm into my day and demand answers like you still own me." Enzo's jaw clenched. "I don't own you." Sienna's gaze slid back to him, sharp again. "You always acted like you did." The words hit a place Enzo kept locked down. He took in a breath, forcing himself to steady. He could do calm. He could do cold. But jealousy was a wildfire, and seeing her like this, glowing, pregnant, with another man, had poured gasoline onto a part of him he hadn't wanted to admit existed. He leaned closer. "Why are you holding his hand?" Sienna's eyes widened slightly, as if she couldn't believe that was his focus. The man beside her squeezed her hand and raised their linked fingers higher, like he was presenting them to the world. "We're on a date," the man said brightly. "A romantic one. We're going to build a crib later. Maybe braid each other's hair. Who knows?" Sienna made a sound, half gasp, half warning. "Miles." "Miles." Enzo stored the name instantly. Miles looked at Enzo with a grin that was downright cheerful. "What? I'm trying to help." Enzo's eyes narrowed. "Help with what?" Miles tilted his head. "With you, obviously. You're spiraling." Enzo's lips flattened. "I'm not spiraling." Miles's eyes flicked to Enzo's clenched fists. "You look like you want to punch a mannequin." Sienna pressed her lips together, like she was fighting not to laugh. Enzo felt heat rise up his neck. This wasn't happening. Not like this. Not in public. Not with someone treating him like he was just some jealous ex-husband having a tantrum. He stepped closer, lowering his voice again, and focused on Sienna. "Tell me if that baby is mine." Sienna's gaze locked on his, steady now. "Why?" Enzo's throat tightened. "Because I need to know." Sienna's expression softened by a fraction. "And if it is?" Enzo didn't hesitate. "Then we're not done." Sienna blinked, a flicker of pain crossing her eyes. "Enzo." "Don't," Enzo said quietly, voice strained. "Don't look at me like that." Miles leaned in again, whispering something in Sienna's ear. She closed her eyes briefly, like she was grounding herself. Enzo watched every small movement like it mattered. Because it did. Sienna opened her eyes and looked at Enzo, and her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "You don't get to decide we're not done just because you're jealous." Enzo swallowed. "It's not just jealousy." Sienna's eyebrows lifted. "Then what is it?" Enzo hesitated, and in that hesitation, his truth threatened to spill out. It's regret. It's love. It's the fact that I never stopped thinking about you. It's the fact that I signed those papers thinking you'd come back. It's the fact that I thought I could let you go and I was wrong. But Enzo didn't say any of it, because vulnerability had always been his weakness. So instead, he looked at her belly again, and his voice came out harder than he intended. You're carrying someone's child. That's not something you hide. Sienna's eyes flashed. I didn't hide it. I left. Enzo's jaw clenched. You left without telling me. Sienna's voice broke slightly just for a second. You were never there to tell. The words landed like a blow, and Enzo felt it in his chest. Miles exhaled dramatically. Okay, wow, this is sad. Hot but sad. Sienna shot him a look. Miles. Miles held up a hand. I'm just saying the tension is insane. If you two don't kiss right now, I'm going to start charging admission. Sienna's cheeks flushed and Enzo's eyes flicked to her lips without permission. For a second, the world slowed. Enzo remembered the taste of her. The way she used to soften under him. The way she'd laugh quietly when he tried to pretend he wasn't emotionally attached. The way she'd tug him down for a kiss like she owned him too. And then he remembered her last night in their house. How quiet she'd been. How she'd looked at him like she was already gone. Enzo's throat tightened. He looked away first this time, forcing his mind back to the present. I want to talk, he said again, quieter now. Somewhere private. Sienna shook her head. No. Enzo took a breath, controlling the edge in his voice. Sienna, please. The word please felt foreign on his tongue. He didn't use it often. He'd never needed to, but he needed it now. Sienna's eyes softened again, but only slightly. I can't. Enzo's chest tightened. Why not? Sienna's hand drifted to her belly again, protective, and she looked away. Because you hurt me, Enzo. Because I'm not sure I can survive falling for you again. She didn't say it, but Enzo saw it anyway. Miles watched them both with a thoughtful expression now, less amused. Then he squeezed Sienna's hand and leaned closer, murmuring, I'm going to go pretend to look at shoes. Don't kill each other. Sienna's eyes widened. Miles. He winked. Relax, I'll be right there, and if he tries anything, I'll scream stranger danger and embarrass him. Enzo's eyes narrowed. You're not funny. Miles grinned. Oh, sweetheart, I'm hilarious. And then he walked away, leaving Sienna and Enzo standing face to face in the middle of the mall corridor, surrounded by ordinary life. Sienna exhaled slowly, looking anywhere but at Enzo. Enzo stepped closer, keeping his voice low. I didn't know. Sienna's eyes snapped to his. You didn't ask. Enzo's jaw tightened. I thought you'd come back. Sienna's laugh was short, not amused. Of course you did. Enzo swallowed. Sienna. She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes shiny but controlled. Then she said quietly, What do you want from me? Enzo's answer came instantly, raw and honest, before he could stop it. Everything. Sienna's breath caught, and Enzo saw the effect his word had on her, how her body reacted even though her mind resisted. Then she straightened, forcing herself back into control. You can't have everything, she said. Not anymore. Enzo's gaze dropped again, drawn helplessly to her belly. His voice softened. Is it mine? Sienna's throat moved as she swallowed. Her eyes flickered away. Enzo's heart slammed. That was all the answer he needed. Not confirmation, yet, but possibility. And possibility was enough to make him feel like his entire world was shifting under his feet. He took another slow breath, forcing himself to speak carefully. Tell me what you need, he said. Whatever it is, I'll do it. Sienna's eyes met his, skeptical. You think you can fix this with money? Enzo's jaw clenched. No. Sienna's voice softened slightly. Then how? Enzo hesitated, then admitted quietly. I don't know yet. Sienna blinked, surprise flashing in her eyes. Enzo almost smirked at the fact that his honesty had shocked her more than his jealousy. "I just know," he continued, voice low. "I can't watch you walk away again." Sienna's lips parted as if she was going to respond. But then a voice behind them cut in, Miles, calling from a distance. "Sienna, look, these shoes are criminally expensive. Enzo probably has a discount code." Sienna's eyes widened in embarrassment. Enzo's jaw tightened, but there was a flicker of something dangerously close to a laugh in his chest. Because, of course, this was happening in the middle of his emotional breakdown. Sienna pressed her lips together, then looked back at Enzo with a serious expression again, as if she had to anchor herself. "I'm not doing this here," she said quietly. Enzo nodded once. "Then where?" Sienna's eyes held his. "You'll find out if I decide you deserve it." Enzo's chest tightened. "Sienna?" She lifted a hand. "No." Enzo froze. Sienna took a slow step back, creating distance. Her eyes were steady, but her voice softened. "You wanted control," she said. "You always wanted control." Enzo didn't deny it. Sienna's hand brushed over her belly again, and for a second, her gaze dropped there too, something tender flickering across her face. Then she looked back up at him. "You don't get control over this," she said. Enzo swallowed hard. Sienna turned slightly, starting to walk away toward Miles, who was pretending to model a shoe like he was on a runway. Enzo watched her go, his body tense, his mind racing. He felt a surge of desperation. He stepped after her, voice low but urgent. "Sienna, if that's my child." Sienna stopped without turning. Enzo's heart pounded. Slowly, she looked back over her shoulder. Her eyes were calm, but there was something in them that made Enzo's stomach twist. "Then you should have loved me better," she said. And then she walked away, leaving Enzo standing there in the middle of the mall, surrounded by people who had no idea his life had just cracked open. Enzo didn't move for several seconds. His men were behind him, silent, watching. Miles glanced back once, then leaned in close to Sienna, whispering something that made her shake her head, though her lips twitched again like she was fighting a smile. She was angry, but she wasn't numb, and that mattered more than Enzo wanted to admit. Enzo finally exhaled, his chest tight. 3 months, and she was pregnant. If the baby was his, he had been blind. If the baby wasn't his, he didn't know if he could survive watching her build a family with someone else. Either way, he had one certainty now, clear as steel. He wasn't letting this story end like the last one. Not without fighting for her. Not without finding out the truth. Not without making her look at him again the way she used to, like he was her home. He turned to his men, voice controlled again, but his eyes were burning. "Find out everything," he said. "Where she lives. Who her friend is. What doctor she's seeing." One of his men hesitated. "Boss, you sure?" Enzo's jaw clenched. He looked once more toward the direction Sienna had disappeared, and his voice dropped low. "I'm done being polite." And as he said it, a new thought hit him. Sharp, terrifying, undeniable. Sienna hadn't looked surprised that he asked if the baby was his. She'd looked hurt, like she'd expected him to know, like part of her had been waiting to see if he would come. Enzo's chest tightened again, and he took one slow breath, then another, because now there was something else besides jealousy pulsing through him. Hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing of all, especially when the woman you loved was already walking away. Sienna didn't stop walking until she was past the shoe store and the crowd thickened enough to swallow her. Miles stayed glued to her side, swinging the shopping bag he'd grabbed just to look believable, like a decoy in a heist. Enzo stood where she'd left him, a dark silhouette of control barely holding together. His men moved with him again, but slower now, because even they could feel something had shifted. It wasn't a threat in the air. It was something worse. A man realizing he was losing the only person who ever made him feel human. Sienna's heart kept beating too fast. She hated that. She hated how one voice, one word, could pull her back into old instincts. She pressed her palm lightly to her belly, as if the baby could calm her, as if the baby could remind her why she'd walked away in the first place. Miles leaned closer, his voice low and quick, playful but protective. Okay, I'm not saying he's going to tackle you in the middle of Nordstrom, but his eyes absolutely said he wants to. Sienna shot him a look. Miles. What? He whispered, wide-eyed. I'm being supportive. I'm also being accurate. He looked at you like you were his oxygen and someone just closed the tank. Sienna swallowed. I don't care. Miles hummed, unconvinced. Sure, that's why your cheeks are pink. They're not pink. Miles gasped dramatically. They are pink. Oh my God, they're pink because he said everything. Sienna's grip tightened on his hand. If you keep talking, I'm going to drop you at the food court and let a group of teenagers roast you for your boots. Miles clutched his chest. Violence. Sienna almost smiled. Almost. Then she felt it, like a pressure against the back of her neck. She turned her head slightly, just enough to look without looking. Enzo was following. Not rushing, not making a scene. Walking the way he always walked. Steady, inevitable, as if the world rearranged itself to make room for him. He was close enough now that Sienna could hear his shoes against the polished floor, could sense the quiet parting of strangers around him. People glanced, then looked away. A man like that didn't need to announce himself. Sienna's stomach tightened. Miles noticed immediately. He squeezed her hand and whispered, Okay. He's definitely going to talk to you again. I don't want to talk to him. Miles's eyes flicked to her belly. And I don't want to eat carbs after 7 p.m. Yet here we are, living in a world of pain. Sienna exhaled, a shaky laugh almost escaping. She hated that he could do that. Pull a laugh out of her when she was holding her ribs together from the inside. They reached the open space near the central atrium where a giant chandelier of glass drops hung above a fountain display. The sound of water helped, like white noise. Sienna slowed, pretending to look at a kiosk selling scented candles. Miles leaned toward the candles with exaggerated seriousness. Okay, if we're going down near Winter Pine because it smells like a man who writes poetry but also owns a truck. Sienna whispered, Stop. Miles inhaled deeply. This one smells like regret. Oh, Enzo would love this. Sienna's lips pressed together hard, fighting the smile. Miles. He held up the candle as if presenting evidence in court. I'm just saying if he buys you a candle, it's officially romantic. That's how romance works. Sienna didn't get the chance to answer. Enzo's voice came from behind them, low, controlled, and aimed directly at her. Sienna. She closed her eyes for half a second, not because she needed strength, because she needed patience. When she turned, Enzo was standing a few feet away, close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders. His eyes were locked on her belly like it was a confession written on her body. His men hovered farther back this time, as if even they understood this wasn't their space. Miles turned fully, putting himself at a slight angle in front of Sienna. Not blocking her exactly, just reminding Enzo that she wasn't alone. Enzo's gaze flicked to Miles, then back to Sienna. We're not done. Sienna's throat tightened. She forced her face calm. We are. Enzo stepped closer by a fraction, stopping at a distance that felt deliberate, respectful enough to appear civilized, close enough to feel like pressure. You walked away, Enzo said. And now I see you like this, pregnant, holding hands. You expect me to just... Sienna cut him off, voice steady. I don't expect anything from you. Enzo's eyes sharpened. I didn't give you permission to disappear. Miles made a choking sound. Oh my God, he said permission. Sienna squeezed Miles's hand harder, a silent warning. Enzo's gaze snapped to Miles. This is between me and her. Miles smiled sweetly. Hi. I'm Miles Carter. I'm the friend. The gay friend. The very gay friend. Enzo's eyes narrowed like he didn't know whether to believe him or be offended by the cheerful delivery. Miles continued, leaning in slightly as if sharing a secret. You can tell because my scarf is expensive and my emotional intelligence is high. Sienna's lips twitched despite herself. Enzo saw it. The faint, almost smile. His expression tightened. This isn't funny. Miles's smile didn't fade. It's a little funny. I mean, not for her, obviously. For her, it's stressful. For me, it's like watching a dramatic TV show where everyone is hot but someone forgot to communicate. Enzo's jaw clenched. Move. Miles's eyebrows rose. Move where? Enzo's voice stayed quiet, but it carried. Away from her. Miles glanced at Sienna. Do you want me to move? Sienna met Enzo's gaze directly. No, I want you to leave. Enzo's eyes darkened. Answer me. No. Enzo's nostrils flared. Sienna. Miles lifted a hand politely. I'm sorry, just for clarity. Are you trying to intimidate a pregnant woman in public? Because if so, I want to be very clear. I will yell. I will yell in a way that makes teenagers record it and post it, and it will be titled, Man Loses It at Mall, and your whole mysterious vibe will be ruined, Sienna whispered. Miles. Miles whispered back, I'm protecting your peace. Enzo's gaze flicked between them, his patience thinning. But something else was there too. Confusion maybe because he wasn't used to someone talking to him like this without fear. Sienna stepped forward half a step, making it clear she wasn't hiding behind Miles. You're not entitled to answers, especially not from me. Enzo's eyes dropped to her belly again, and his voice softened just enough to make Sienna's chest ache. How far along? Sienna's fingers tightened around the candle kiosk edge for a second, grounding herself. Far enough. Enzo's gaze lifted sharply. Stop doing that. Doing what? Dodging. Sienna forced her face steady. I'm not dodging, I'm refusing. Enzo looked like he was fighting something inside himself, like he had a sentence he wanted to shout but knew it would make him look weak. He stared at her belly again, then at her hand, still linked with Miles. His voice turned sharper. Why are you holding his hand? Miles squeezed their hands and lifted them like a trophy again. Because I'm adorable. Sienna shot him a look, but he just winked. Enzo's eyes narrowed. Let go. Sienna didn't. That was the point. Enzo's shoulders rose slightly with a controlled inhale. Sienna, we need to talk somewhere private. Sienna shook her head. No. Enzo's eyes flashed. You can't. I can, she said, voice calm. Because you don't get to command me anymore. Enzo's jaw tightened. I'm not commanding you. Miles coughed. That was absolutely a command. Enzo ignored him, eyes locked on Sienna. If there's a child... Sienna cut him off. You don't get to say that like you care now. Enzo's mouth opened, then closed. His face tightened, like the words hit a bruise he didn't want touched. Miles's tone softened slightly, just for a moment. Still playful, but less sharp. She's right, you know. Enzo's gaze snapped to him, dangerous now. I didn't ask you. Miles shrugged. And yet, here we are. Sienna exhaled slowly, forcing herself not to shake. She hated that Enzo could still do this, make her feel like she was standing on a thin ledge even when she was doing everything right. Enzo looked at her for a long moment. Then his voice dropped lower, quieter, and somehow that was worse. Is the baby mine? Sienna felt the question like a hand around her throat. Miles inhaled dramatically, like he was watching a courtroom reveal. Oh, we're doing the big question. Sienna's eyes flicked to Miles, warning, then back to Enzo. She forced her voice steady. That's not your business. Enzo's face went still. If it's mine, it is my business. Sienna's chest tightened. You didn't act like it was your business when we were married. Enzo's jaw clenched hard enough to show the muscle jumping near his cheek. He looked away for half a second, then back at her. I made mistakes, he said. Sienna blinked, surprised. He almost never admitted that out loud. Enzo's voice remained low. I know. Sienna's throat tightened. She wanted to hold on to her anger because anger was safer than longing. Longing was what had kept her trapped for too long, waiting for scraps of attention, Convincing herself his coldness was just stress. Convincing herself he'd eventually choose her. She refused to step back into that. Miles leaned in, whispering in Sienna's ear. He just admitted mistakes. This is growth. Should we clap? Sienna whispered back, not now. Miles whispered, I'm proud of him though. Like a little raccoon learning to wash his hands. Sienna almost laughed. She hated that she almost laughed. Enzo watched their whispering and jealousy flared again in his eyes. What is he saying to you? Miles turned to Enzo brightly. I'm saying you're emotionally constipated. Enzo's gaze narrowed. Excuse me? Miles nodded seriously. Yes, and it's not your fault. Probably childhood. But she isn't your therapist, and she isn't your punching bag. So if you want her back, you have to learn how to talk like a human man. Sienna's eyes widened. Miles? Miles smiled. What? It's true. Enzo's jaw tightened. His voice stayed controlled, but it had an edge. I don't need advice from you. Miles's eyebrows rose. Do you want her back? Enzo didn't answer immediately. That silence was an answer. Miles tilted his head. Then you do. Enzo's gaze moved back to Sienna. Tell me where you live. Sienna's eyes hardened instantly. Absolutely not. Enzo's mouth tightened. I'm not going to show up uninvited. Miles made a skeptical sound. That's adorable. Enzo's eyes flicked to him. I'm serious. Miles nodded. I'm also serious. But you don't exactly inspire trust right now, Enzo. Enzo looked like he wanted to argue, but Sienna spoke first. You're not coming into my home. Enzo's gaze held hers. Then meet me somewhere. Sienna shook her head. No. Enzo took a slow breath, forcing calm. Sienna, please. The word please landed in the air like something fragile. Sienna felt her chest tighten. She hated that it affected her. She hated that part of her still recognized that voice, still wanted to soften, still wanted to believe him. Miles saw the hesitation on her face and immediately stepped in, a gentle hand on Sienna's elbow. Okay, new plan. We're going to make this less public meltdowny. Enzo's gaze snapped to him. I'm not having a meltdown. Miles smiled. You followed us through the mall like a dramatic villain in a romance novel. That's a meltdown. Sienna whispered. Miles. Miles squeezed her elbow lightly, then looked at Enzo again. If you actually want to talk to her, you'll do it on her terms. Enzo's eyes narrowed. And what are her terms? Miles glanced at Sienna. Do you want me to set terms? Sienna exhaled slowly. No, I can speak for myself. She looked directly at Enzo, forcing her voice calm. You don't get access to me because you're jealous. You don't get to show up and act like the past didn't happen. Enzo's gaze stayed fixed on her face. I'm not pretending. Sienna's voice softened just a fraction. Then prove it. Enzo's jaw tightened. How? Sienna hesitated for half a second, then said, Start by leaving, right now. Without making a scene, without trying to follow me, without asking your men to trail me. Enzo's eyes flashed, annoyance, pride, resistance. Then something changed. His shoulders lowered slightly. He looked at her for a long moment, like he was swallowing something bitter. Finally, he nodded once. Fine, he said. Sienna blinked, surprised again. Enzo's gaze didn't leave her. But you're not done with me. Sienna's heart thudded. She forced her face steady. I am. Enzo stepped closer just enough to make her breath catch, but he didn't touch her. He kept his hands at his sides, fists loosening slightly, as if he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. His voice dropped low, meant only for her. You can hate me, you can ignore me, but you can't erase me. Sienna's throat tightened. Watch me. Enzo's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'll be watching. Miles made a gagging noise. Okay, that's creepy. Let's not do that. Enzo's gaze flicked to Miles, then back to Sienna one last time. His eyes dropped to her belly again, softer now, almost reverent. Then he stepped back. He turned, his men moving with him, forming a quiet wall around him as he walked away. People parted without realizing they were doing it. Sienna stood frozen for a moment, watching him leave, the adrenaline still buzzing under her skin. Miles exhaled loudly. Well, that was a lot. Sienna swallowed. I hate him. Miles nodded, dead serious. Sure. Sienna glared at him. Don't. Miles held up both hands. I'm not saying anything. Sienna started walking again, needing movement, needing distance. Miles followed, bouncing slightly like he was trying to shake off the tension. Okay, we need to debrief, like after a crime scene. Sienna shot him a look. Stop calling it a crime scene. Miles shrugged. It felt like one. He stared at you like he wanted to handcuff your feelings. Sienna pressed her lips together, fighting the tremble in them. Miles' voice softened. You okay? Sienna's hand moved to her belly again, instinctive. I'm fine. Miles's eyes narrowed slightly. That's a lie you tell when you don't want to cry in public. Sienna swallowed. I'm not crying. Miles walked closer, shoulder brushing hers, warm and steady. Good, because if you cry, I will cry. And if I cry, my eyeliner will run, and then everyone will think we're starring in a sad commercial near Auntie Anne's pretzels. Sienna let out a short breath that was almost a laugh. Miles grinned. There she is. They reached a quieter corridor near a maternity store display with soft lighting and mannequins in flowing dresses. Sienna slowed without meaning to. Miles noticed and immediately gasped. Oh my God, you want to go in? Sienna glared. No. Miles pointed at a mannequin with a long, soft dress. Yes, you do. You want to touch the fabric and pretend your life is calm. Sienna muttered. I hate you. Miles smiled. Love you too. She stepped into the store because she needed something normal, something that didn't involve Enzo's eyes on her belly like he was trying to claim the future. Inside, it smelled like vanilla and clean cotton. The lighting was warm. Calm music played softly. Sienna ran her fingers over a dress, then another. She tried to breathe. Miles hovered nearby, pretending to examine baby socks. Okay, he whispered. Here's the deal. Sienna didn't look at him. There is no deal. Miles lowered his voice even more. He's going to find you. Sienna's stomach tightened. He said he wouldn't follow. Miles shrugged. He said he wouldn't follow you out of the mall. That's not the same thing as not finding you later. Enzo is the kind of man who treats no like a puzzle. Sienna's fingers froze on the fabric. Miles's tone turned practical, careful. Which is why we need a plan. Sienna turned to him sharply. The plan is, he stays out of my life. Miles held her gaze. And what if he's the father? Sienna's throat tightened. He doesn't get to use that as a way back in. Miles nodded slowly. Agreed. But he does get to know, eventually. For the baby. Sienna's eyes stung. Miles softened, touching her arm. I'm not taking his side. I'm taking your future's side. Sienna looked away, blinking hard. I don't want him to ruin this. Miles' voice turned gentle. Maybe he already knows he ruined it. That's why he looks like a man who can't breathe. Sienna swallowed. He doesn't deserve me. Miles nodded. True. Sienna stared at the dresses, her mind racing. Miles continued, quieter. But you deserve peace. And if he's going to circle you like a storm, we need to decide how you're going to stand in it. Sienna turned to him, voice low. I don't want him near the appointment. Miles tilted his head. He's going to ask. Sienna's fingers tightened around the hanger. Then I'll say no. Miles studied her for a moment, then nodded. Okay. But if he shows up anyway, we need to know what you'll do. Sienna's breath caught slightly. Because she didn't know. She didn't know if she'd walk away again. Or if, the moment she saw him in a place that mattered, where the baby was real, where the heartbeat was undeniable, she'd feel something she couldn't control. Miles must have seen the uncertainty flicker across her face because he leaned in and whispered, You don't have to decide today. Sienna whispered back, He's going to push. Miles smiled faintly. Then we push back. With boundaries, with humor, and with a friend who will absolutely embarrass him if needed. Sienna's lips twitched. Miles straightened, suddenly bright again. Now, pick a dress. Something that makes you feel like a goddess. If he sees you again, I want him to suffer artistically. Sienna let out a soft, reluctant laugh. Miles grinned. Yes, that one. That sound. Keep it. Sienna's fingers brushed over a pale blue dress, then paused. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a message from her sister or a reminder. Instead, it was an unknown number. Her stomach tightened as she read the text. We need to talk, tonight. I'll be at Rayner's on 5th, 8 p.m. Enzo. Sienna's breath caught. Miles leaned over her shoulder, reading instantly. His eyes widened. Then he made a soft, delighted sound like someone who just found out there was drama in the group chat. Oh, he whispered. He's fast. Sienna's fingers curled around the phone. He can't do this. Miles nodded. He can. He just did. Sienna stared at the message, pulse thudding. She hadn't given him her number, which meant he'd already started digging, which meant he wasn't going to stop. Miles watched her face, then asked quietly, What are you going to do? Sienna didn't answer, because the truth was she could ignore the message. She could block the number. She could disappear again. But Enzo had seen her belly. He'd seen the curve of the future. And now she wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was protecting a life. Sienna swallowed hard, eyes still on the screen. And in the soft music of the maternity store, with Miles standing beside her like a shield made of humor and loyalty, one question sat heavy in her chest. If she met Enzo tonight, what would she feel when he looked at her like he still belonged? Sienna stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then lit again when her thumb brushed it. Tonight, 8 p.m., Rayner's on 5th. Miles watched her like he was waiting for a verdict. He found your number, Sienna said quietly. Miles nodded once. Which means he's already doing what he does best. Controlling everything, she murmured. Trying to, Miles corrected. But you're not the same woman you were. Sienna swallowed and slid the phone back into her pocket, like that could erase the pressure building in her chest. Around them, the maternity store stayed calm. Soft music, warm lighting, mannequins frozen in gentle poses. It felt like a different planet than the one Enzo lived on. I'm not going, she said. Miles didn't argue right away. He just tilted his head, thoughtful. Okay. Sienna blinked. That's it? Miles shrugged. You said you're not going. You're allowed to not go. Sienna's shoulders lowered a fraction, relieved, until Miles added, But you should still decide what you want, not what you're afraid will happen. Her throat tightened. I'm not afraid. Miles gave her a look that said, Please. Sienna. She exhaled through her nose. I'm tired. I'm pregnant. I don't want to sit across from him while he stares at my belly like it's a contract. Miles stepped closer, voice gentler. Then don't sit across from him. Sit next to me, in public, where the waitress knows your name and there are 10 cameras and a family eating fries 2 tables away. Sienna's lips pressed together. You're acting like we're planning a mission. We are, Miles said, dead serious. Operation. Don't let the hot, emotionally damaged man ruin your evening. Sienna's mouth twitched despite herself. Miles. I'm serious, he insisted. He's going to keep pushing. If you ignore him, he'll push harder. If you meet him, you set terms. I already set terms, she whispered. I told him to leave. And he left, Miles said. Which, honestly, rare behavior for a man like that. Sienna went still. Part of her hated that Miles was right. Another part hated that the smallest act of restraint from Enzo felt like something she could measure. Miles lowered his voice. Look at me. Sienna met his eyes. He softened. If the baby is his, you're going to have to talk eventually. Not because he deserves you, because your life deserves peace. Sienna's hand drifted to her belly without thinking. The baby kicked, small, faint, but real. Her eyes stung. Miles noticed and immediately brightened, like he could sense her slipping. Okay, Here's what we do. We go. We stay 30 minutes. If he's respectful, we extend. If he's not, we leave. And if he tries to get intense, I will order dessert loudly until he calms down." Sienna let out a quiet laugh that surprised her. Miles smiled like he'd won. "There it is. That laugh is your power." Her phone vibrated again. Another message. "I'll be alone. No men. Just me. Enzo." Sienna's chest tightened. She hated that the words, "just me," hit different than threats. Miles leaned over, read it, and made a face. "He's trying. I hate it." Sienna whispered, "I hate it too." Miles tapped her elbow. "So? We go?" Sienna stared at the dresses again, searching for clarity in fabric and soft lighting like it could save her. Then she said, "We go. 30 minutes." Miles grinned. "Perfect. I'll wear something that screams, 'I will ruin your life if you raise your voice.'" "Don't start a fight," Sienna warned. Miles held up a hand. "No fights, only humiliation. It's more effective." At 7:58 p.m., Rayner's on 5th glowed like a warm box of light against the dark street. The restaurant had tall windows, soft lamps, and a kind of quiet luxury that didn't try too hard. Sienna paused outside, one hand on her belly, the other gripping Miles's arm. "I can't believe I'm here," she whispered. Miles squeezed her gently. "You're not here for him. You're here for you." They stepped inside. The hostess recognized Sienna immediately, because Sienna had started coming here the past month. Small routines, small comforts. A life built without Enzo in it. "Sienna," the hostess said warmly, then noticed her belly and smiled. "Oh, hi. Table for 2? Miles answered first. 3, unfortunately." Sienna shot him a look. Miles whispered, "I'm doing emotional math." The hostess glanced toward the back and lowered her voice. "There's a man waiting. He asked for you." Sienna's pulse jumped. Miles leaned close. "Breathe." They followed the hostess past candlelit tables. Sienna's senses sharpened. Clinking glasses, low laughter, a jazz song moving through the room like velvet. Her stomach tightened when she saw him. Enzo sat in a corner booth, alone. No men in black behind him. No looming presence. Just him, in a dark shirt with the top button undone. Sleeves pushed up to his forearms like he hadn't realized he'd done it. A glass of water untouched. His hands clasped, then unclasped, then clasped again. He looked tense. And when he saw Sienna, something in his face changed so quickly it almost hurt to witness. His gaze dropped to her belly for a split second, soft, stunned, then lifted to her eyes like he was trying to find the right way to exist in the same room with her. He stood, not rushed, not aggressive, just respectful. Sienna's chest tightened in confusion. She hadn't come prepared for respectful Enzo. Miles slid into the booth first, claiming the side closest to the aisle like a bodyguard with better hair. Sienna sat across from Enzo, leaving enough distance to breathe. Enzo waited until she settled before he sat back down. He didn't reach for her. He didn't invade her space. But his eyes stayed on her like gravity. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Miles clapped once, softly. "Okay, welcome to group therapy. I'm the facilitator. Let's use I feel statements." Sienna hissed. "Miles." Enzo's gaze flicked to Miles, then back to Sienna. "Thank you for coming." Sienna kept her voice calm. 30 minutes. Enzo nodded immediately. "Whatever you want." The waiter appeared and Miles ordered sparkling water like it was a shield. Sienna ordered ginger tea. Enzo ordered nothing. When the waiter left, Enzo's eyes dropped to the tea, then back to her face, and his voice came out quiet. "You look different." Sienna didn't bite. "So do you." Enzo swallowed. "You look good." Miles sighed dramatically. "Oh, here we go." Sienna shot him a warning look. Miles pretended to zip his lips. Enzo leaned forward slightly, elbows near the edge of the table, but he didn't cross into her space. "I didn't know." Sienna's fingers tightened around the handle of her teacup. "You keep saying that." Enzo's jaw flexed. "Because it's true." Sienna lifted her chin. And what do you want me to do with that truth? Enzo stared at her for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was steadier than earlier in the mall, but it carried something raw underneath. I want a chance to fix what I broke. Miles made a small sound like he was about to interrupt, but Sienna held up a finger toward him without looking. Enzo's gaze stayed on her. I know I wasn't there the way I should have been. Sienna's mouth tightened. You weren't there at all. Enzo flinched, just slightly, but she saw it. You're right. The admission hung in the air, heavy, strange, because Enzo didn't usually admit anything he could avoid. Sienna forced herself to stay still. Why now? Enzo's eyes dropped, then lifted again. Because I saw you. Sienna didn't respond. Enzo's voice lowered. Because I saw your belly. Because I saw you holding someone else's hand and I realized I've been pretending I could live without you. Miles leaned back, impressed despite himself. Wow, that was almost emotional. Gold star. Enzo ignored him, eyes locked on Sienna. I don't want you to be alone. Sienna's laugh was quiet and sharp. I'm not alone. I know, Enzo said, and his gaze flicked to Miles for a second, then returned. But I mean, in the ways that matter. Sienna's throat tightened. She hated that he could still find words that landed. She held his gaze anyway. What do you want, Enzo? Specifically. Enzo didn't hesitate. To know if the baby is mine. Miles's eyes widened like he'd been waiting for that line. He slowly reached for the breadbasket on the table behind him as if preparing for a show. Sienna's spine stiffened. No. Enzo's expression didn't harden this time. It softened, which somehow made it harder. Sienna, he said quietly. Please. The word please again, like he was learning it. Sienna stared at him. You don't get to say please now and expect access. Enzo nodded once. Then tell me what I get. Her chest tightened. She didn't have an answer that felt safe. Miles leaned forward, voice bright but careful. Okay, here's what you get, Enzo. You get to apologize properly. You get to listen. You get to accept boundaries. And you get to stop staring at her stomach like it owes you an explanation. Enzo's jaw flexed, but he didn't snap. He looked at Miles. I am listening. Miles smiled sweetly. Great. Then listen harder. Sienna's tea arrived. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup to steady herself. Enzo's gaze flicked to her hands. Are you okay? Sienna didn't want to answer that. Not with vulnerability. Not with anything that could soften her stance. I'm fine, she said. Enzo's eyes held hers. You're not. Sienna's throat tightened. Don't. Enzo inhaled slowly, then did something she didn't expect. He looked down. Not a way to dismiss her. Down, like he was choosing humility. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Not with you. Not with tenderness. I wasn't raised for it. Sienna's pulse thudded. She hated the way honesty pulled at her. Enzo lifted his gaze again. But I can learn. Miles blinked. Okay, that was hot. Sienna kicked him under the table. Miles made a silent, pained face. Enzo's mouth twitched, barely, like he was fighting a smile. Then his expression turned serious again. Tell me one thing, he said softly. One thing I can do that would make your life easier. Sienna's lips parted, then closed. She didn't trust this. She didn't trust herself. But the baby shifted again, and she felt the reality of her body. Appointments, fatigue, carrying life. Things that were bigger than pride. She swallowed. Stop digging into my life. Enzo nodded. Okay. Sienna blinked. Okay. Enzo didn't flinch. Okay. I won't investigate. I won't follow you. I won't send anyone. I'll wait until you tell me what you want. Miles's eyes narrowed, skeptical but intrigued. Is this a trick? Enzo glanced at him. No. Miles tilted his head. Are you capable of waiting? Enzo's gaze returned to Sienna. For her, yes. Sienna felt heat rise in her chest, uncomfortable and unwanted. She forced her voice calm. Good. Enzo hesitated, then asked, Do you have a doctor's appointment soon? Sienna froze. Miles slowly lowered his bread like he'd sensed danger. Sienna's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? Enzo's expression tightened. I don't. I'm asking. Sienna's suspicion didn't fade. Why? Enzo's voice was careful. Because if the baby might be mine, I want to be there. Sienna's throat tightened. No. Enzo didn't argue. He just nodded once, accepting it too easily, which made Sienna's skin prickle. Then he said quietly, I remember a night. Sienna's breath caught. Miles's eyes widened. Then he whispered to himself, Oh my God. Sienna's fingers tightened around her cup. What night? Enzo's gaze held hers, steady, almost gentle. The night you looked at me like you were done waiting. Sienna's chest tightened with an old memory she didn't want pulled into the light. Enzo's voice lowered. If I'm wrong, tell me. But I don't think I'm wrong. Sienna swallowed hard. She felt Miles watching her, suddenly quiet. Enzo didn't reach across the table. He didn't touch her. He just looked at her like he was asking permission to hope. Sienna's phone vibrated in her pocket. She didn't want to check it, but her body reacted. Instinct. She pulled it out. A reminder notification flashed on the screen. Ultrasound appointment, Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Enzo's gaze dropped to the phone, then to her face. His expression sharpened, not with anger, with focus. He didn't ask how he'd guessed. He didn't demand. He just said very quietly, Please. Sienna's chest tightened, and the room suddenly felt too warm, too small. Miles leaned in, whispering near her ear, You don't have to say yes, but you should decide what feels right for you. Sienna stared at Enzo, at the man who had once been her husband, at the man who was now asking with his eyes instead of commanding with his voice. Her 30 minutes were almost up, and she still didn't know which was more dangerous, letting him back into her world, or walking away while he still looked at her like he'd finally realized what he lost. Sienna didn't answer Enzo's, Please. She didn't need to. The silence already said everything. Conflict, memory, resistance, and something fragile trying not to wake up. Miles broke it first, clearing his throat with exaggerated importance. Okay, time check. We are officially at minute 23 of our 30, which means emotions are peaking and someone is about to say something they regret. Enzo didn't look away from Sienna. I won't regret the truth. Sienna finally spoke, her voice low but steady. Truth isn't enough anymore. Enzo nodded once, slowly. I know. That surprised her. She hadn't expected agreement. She had expected defensiveness. She leaned back slightly, creating space again. You keep saying you want to fix things, but you don't even know what broke them. Enzo inhaled, then exhaled through his nose. I thought providing was loving. I thought protecting was enough. I didn't realize you were lonely while standing next to me. The words hit harder than an apology. Miles blinked. Oh, wow. He is learning. Sienna ignored him, eyes locked on Enzo. And when I tried to tell you, Enzo's jaw tightened. I didn't listen. Her throat tightened, but she refused to let her voice shake. I stopped asking because it hurt less to stay quiet. Enzo lowered his gaze for a moment. When he looked back up, his eyes were darker, heavier. I see that now. Miles leaned back, folding his arms. Okay, I hate to say this, but this is the healthiest conversation I've ever witnessed involving a man in an all-black outfit. Sienna almost smiled. Almost. The waiter came by, sensing tension, refilled water glasses, then disappeared like a ghost. The table felt smaller after that. Enzo spoke again, carefully. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to let me earn space in your life. Sienna studied him. And if I say no, I'll respect it, he answered without hesitation. Miles raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Enzo glanced at him briefly. Yes. Sienna searched his face for signs of manipulation, of control hiding behind calm. She didn't find it. What she found unsettled her more. He looked afraid, not of her anger, of losing her completely. She shifted in her seat, one hand resting unconsciously on her belly. Enzo noticed immediately, his eyes softening before he could stop it. She caught it. "You don't get access just because you're being gentle," she said. "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm asking, not taking." Miles let out a quiet whistle. Character development. Sienna exhaled slowly. "You asked about the appointment." Enzo nodded. "Yes." She held his gaze. "I'm not ready for you to be there." "I understand." That answer came too easily. Sienna frowned. "Do you?" "Yes," Enzo said. "Because if you're not ready, and I push, I lose you again." The honesty disarmed her more than any grand gesture ever could. Miles leaned in, whispering just loud enough. "Okay, I officially approve of this version." Sienna shot him a look. "You're not helping." "I absolutely am, emotional translator." She turned back to Enzo. "This doesn't mean I trust you." Enzo nodded. "I wouldn't expect you to. And it doesn't mean I forgive you. I don't deserve forgiveness yet." The word "yet" lingered between them. Sienna felt something shift. Not surrender, not hope, but curiosity. Dangerous curiosity. Her phone buzzed softly on the table this time. She didn't look at it. She already knew what it was, the same reminder, the same future ticking closer. Enzo noticed her tension. "You don't have to decide anything tonight." Sienna blinked. "Why are you being reasonable?" His mouth curved slightly. "Because if I scare you, I lose." Miles nodded approvingly. Correct answer. Sienna glanced at Miles, then back at Enzo. "I don't want you showing up uninvited, ever." "I won't. And I don't want you contacting my doctor." "I haven't." She studied him again, making sure. "And if you find out anyway?" Enzo held her gaze. "Then I wait for you to invite me." Miles' eyes widened. "Who are you?" A corner of Enzo's mouth lifted. "Desperate." That word sat heavy in Sienna's chest. She stood slowly, signaling the end. "My 30 minutes are up." Enzo stood immediately, giving her space, not reaching for her. That restraint felt louder than any demand. Miles slid out beside her, grabbing his coat. "Well, this was intense. I need cake." Sienna picked up her bag. "We're leaving." Enzo nodded. "Thank you for coming." She paused, then said quietly, "Don't make me regret it." Enzo's eyes held hers. "I won't." Outside, the night air was cool and grounding. Sienna exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Miles hooked his arm through hers as they walked. "Okay, honest reaction." She hesitated. "He's different." Miles smiled softly. "Yeah, that's what scares you." She didn't deny it. As they reached the car, Sienna glanced back once. Enzo was still standing by the restaurant window, watching, not following, not chasing, just waiting. And that waiting felt like a promise, or a test. She didn't know which one scared her more. Sienna didn't sleep much that night. She lay on her side, one hand resting over her belly, staring at the faint glow of the city through the curtains. Every time she closed her eyes, Enzo's voice came back. Calm, careful, nothing like the man she had left. That was what unsettled her most. Not his jealousy, not his presence, the restraint. She shifted when the baby moved, a gentle roll that made her breathe out slowly. "I know," she whispered, more to herself than to the life growing inside her. "I don't trust him either." Morning came without clarity. Miles was already in her kitchen when she woke, barefoot, wearing her oversized hoodie, making coffee like he owned the place. He looked at her face and immediately frowned. "You dreamed about him," he said. Sienna blinked. "How do you know?" "You're staring at the toaster like it betrayed you." She sank into a chair. "I hate that he got under my skin again." Miles poured her a mug and slid it across the counter. "Correction. He never left your skin. You just stopped letting him live rent-free in your head." She wrapped her hands around the mug. "He asked about the appointment." Miles nodded. "Of course he did. And he didn't push when I said no." Miles leaned against the counter, thoughtful. That's new. That's what scares me. Miles smiled softly. Growth is terrifying, especially when it comes from someone who hurt you. Sienna's phone buzzed. Her body reacted before her mind did. She checked the screen. I meant what I said. I'll wait. Enzo. No time, no place, no pressure. She exhaled slowly. Miles watched her face. He's playing the long game. Or he's actually changing. Miles shrugged. Both can be true. Thursday arrived faster than she wanted. The ultrasound clinic was quiet, soft music playing, the smell of antiseptic mixed with lavender. Sienna sat in the waiting room, filling out forms she'd already filled out before. Miles sat beside her, leg bouncing. You okay? He whispered. She nodded. I just didn't think this part would feel so heavy. Miles squeezed her hand. You're doing great. Her phone buzzed again. Good luck today. Enzo. She stared at the message longer this time. Miles noticed. You didn't tell him where you are. I didn't. And he didn't ask. No. Miles tilted his head. Okay, that matters. The nurse called her name. Sienna stood slowly, heart pounding. Inside the dimmed room, she lay back as the technician prepared the equipment. Miles stood near her head, holding her hand, quieter now. The screen flickered, and then there it was. Movement, shape, life. Sienna's breath caught. That's your baby, the technician said gently. Sienna's eyes burned. She nodded, unable to speak. The heartbeat filled the room, fast, strong, undeniable. Miles sucked in a sharp breath. Oh, wow. Tears slid down Sienna's temples, disappearing into her hair. She laughed softly through them, overwhelmed. In that moment, everything became real in a way it hadn't before. And for the first time, a thought she'd been avoiding pressed fully into her chest. He deserves to know. Not because he was Enzo, not because he was powerful, because this child had a right to their father. That evening, Sienna sat on her couch, staring at her phone. Miles sat on the floor in front of her, sorting baby socks like it was a serious task. If you don't text him, I will, he said casually. She glared. You will not. I absolutely will. I'll send him a photo of a sock and say, guess what size? She huffed out a laugh. You're impossible, but effective. She looked at the phone again. Can we talk? She typed. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Whenever you're ready. She swallowed. Tomorrow, my place. You don't bring anyone. There was a pause, longer this time. Then, I'll be there. Thank you for trusting me. She set the phone down, heart racing. Miles looked up. You just invited the emotionally repressed Mafia boss into your home. Yes. And you're not panicking? She paused. I am. Just quietly. The next evening, Enzo arrived exactly on time. He stood outside her door when she opened it, hands empty, posture careful. He looked around the apartment like he was stepping into sacred ground. This is your space, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. It is. She didn't invite him in immediately. She held his gaze, searching for impatience. She found none. Then she stepped aside. He entered slowly, eyes taking in details. Soft throws on the couch, framed photos, the quiet life she'd built. No guards, no intimidation. Just him. Miles stayed, arms crossed, fully alert. Ground rules, he announced. No raised voices, no ownership language, no dramatic declarations before dessert. Enzo nodded. Understood. Sienna gestured to the couch. Enzo sat, back straight, hands on his knees like a man waiting for judgment. She sat across from him. There was a long silence. Then she spoke. I had the ultrasound today. Enzo's breath caught. He didn't interrupt. The baby is healthy. He closed his eyes briefly, like he was absorbing a blow and a blessing at the same time. Thank you for telling me. She swallowed. There's something else. He looked at her, eyes dark, focused. I'm listening. She held his gaze. The timeline matches. His chest rose sharply. Sienna. She lifted a hand. Let me finish. He nodded immediately. It's yours, she said. The baby is yours. The words settled into the room like a truth finally given air. Enzo didn't speak. He didn't move. His eyes dropped to her belly, then lifted back to her face, shining with something raw and unguarded. His voice came out hoarse. Are you sure? Yes. His hands shook slightly as he pressed them together. He looked away, then back, like he didn't trust his own reaction. Miles sniffed loudly. Okay, I'm emotional. Just letting everyone know. Enzo let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in him for months. I didn't know how to hope without hurting you. Sienna's chest tightened. That doesn't erase the past. I know, he said immediately. But it changes my future. She studied him. What do you want, Enzo? He didn't hesitate. To be present, to support you, to be there for the baby. And me? His eyes held hers. Only if you want me. Silence stretched. Sienna's hand moved to her belly again. The baby shifted as if responding. She took a slow breath. We start slow. Enzo nodded. As slow as you need. No pressure. I swear. And if you mess this up, he cut in gently. I lose everything. She believed him. Miles cleared his throat loudly. Okay, before we all cry, this is progress, not a reunion. Don't get it twisted. Enzo glanced at him. Thank you. Miles blinked. For what? For protecting her when I didn't. Miles's expression softened. You're welcome. Sienna watched them, heart heavy and light all at once. This wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't love reborn. It was something fragile and new. A door cracked open, and she didn't know yet if walking through it would lead to healing or heartbreak all over again. Enzo didn't try to stay after Sienna told him the truth. That was the first real change. He stood, slow and controlled, like a man forcing himself to respect the edge of something fragile. Thank you for letting me know, he said again, softer this time, and his eyes flicked to her belly with a tenderness he didn't hide. Sienna watched him carefully. This doesn't mean you're back in my life the way you want. Enzo nodded. It means I'm in it the way you allow. Miles folded his arms, impressed, despite himself. Okay, that sentence was decent. Enzo looked at Miles. Teach me what not to ruin. Miles blinked. Did you just ask me for help? Enzo didn't flinch. Yes. Miles turned to Sienna, pointing at Enzo like he was presenting a rare animal. He's evolving. Sienna's lips twitched, then she forced herself serious. Slow, she reminded Enzo. Slow, he agreed instantly. And then he left. No pressure, no last-minute grab at her heart, no dramatic line at the door. Sienna stood there after it clicked shut, breathing like she'd just stepped off a ledge. Miles exhaled loudly. Okay, that was not terrible. It was controlled, Sienna admitted. Miles nodded. Terrifying. The next week became a strange new routine. Enzo didn't flood her phone. He didn't show up unannounced. He sent one message each morning. Good morning. How do you feel today? If she answered, he answered. If she didn't, he didn't chase. He asked practical questions about cravings, about her fatigue, about what she needed, without trying to turn every conversation into a second-chance speech. It made it harder to hate him, which made Sienna angry at herself. Miles, of course, had opinions. He's being respectful, Sienna said one afternoon while Miles was at her counter slicing strawberries like it was therapy. Miles lifted a berry. Respectful is the bare minimum. I know. Miles pointed the strawberry like a warning. Don't let the bare minimum make you fall in love. Sienna shot him a look. I'm not falling in love. I'm already... She stopped herself. Miles' eyes widened. Say it. Sienna glared. No. Miles smirked. You were going to say, I'm already in love. I was not. Miles leaned back. Your face absolutely did. Sienna grabbed a strawberry and shoved it in his mouth. Chew. Enzo's first real test came in the form of a simple request. He texted, May I see you? Not to talk, just to bring something. Sienna stared at the message for a long time. Miles hovered behind her shoulder like a nosy angel. "If you say yes, I'm staying." "I didn't ask you." "You don't have to," Miles said brightly. "I'm your emotional security system." Sienna exhaled. 15 minutes. Miles will be here." The reply came fast. "Good. I prefer witnesses." That surprised her. At 6:01 p.m., Enzo knocked once. When she opened the door, he stood there holding a plain paper bag from a local bakery and a small folder. No flowers, no jewelry, no grand apology performance. He glanced at Miles and nodded politely. "Miles?" Miles blinked. He said my name like we're co-workers. Enzo held up the bakery bag. "Ginger cookies. The owner said they help with nausea." Sienna's throat tightened. It wasn't the cookies. It was the effort without spectacle. "And this?" she asked, nodding at the folder. Enzo opened it and slid it toward her on the table without pushing it into her hands. "Insurance information. A pediatrician list. 3 childcare options that are vetted. Not decisions. Options." Sienna stared. "You did all this?" "I asked questions," Enzo said. "I listened. I didn't assume." Miles slowly sat down like he needed a chair for this. "Okay, that's actually helpful." Enzo's eyes flicked to Sienna. "You can throw it away if you want. I won't be offended." Sienna swallowed. "Why are you doing this?" Enzo didn't rush his answer. "Because you shouldn't carry everything alone." Miles lifted a finger. "She's not alone." Enzo nodded. "I know. I'm not trying to replace you." Miles blinked. "Oh my God. He's respectful of my role. I feel seen." Sienna almost laughed. Almost. Then Enzo's gaze dropped to her belly again, and he hesitated, like he was standing at the edge of permission. Sienna felt it. The question he wasn't asking. Miles saw it too and whispered, "He wants to touch it. He's scared you'll say no." Sienna's pulse quickened. Enzo looked up at her. "May I?" 2 words. No entitlement. Sienna's chest tightened. She hated how quickly her eyes stung. She didn't answer immediately. She simply sat, breathing, feeling the baby shift like a quiet reminder that this wasn't just about her pain anymore. Then she nodded once. Enzo moved slowly, kneeling in front of her instead of leaning over her. His hand hovered first, asking again without words. When Sienna didn't pull back, he placed his palm gently over the curve. His breath caught. He didn't smile. He looked reverent, like something in him had finally found its place. And then the baby moved. A clear little push under his hand. Enzo froze. Miles gasped, like it was a magic trick. "Oh my God, the baby just said hello." That was a hello. Enzo's eyes lifted to Sienna's, glossy and stunned. His voice came out rough. "That was real." Sienna's throat tightened. "Yes." Enzo swallowed, keeping his hand still, as if moving would break the moment. "I missed so much." Sienna whispered, "You did." Enzo nodded once, accepting the truth without defense. "I won't miss the rest." Miles cleared his throat loudly, blinking fast. "Okay, I'm going to pretend I'm not emotional. Continue." Over the next days, Enzo proved himself in small ways that felt bigger than grand gestures. He showed up when Sienna invited him to a prenatal class, sat quietly, asked respectful questions, didn't try to claim her in front of strangers. When the instructor made a joke about nervous dads, Enzo didn't bristle. He just looked at Sienna and murmured, "I am nervous." Sienna glanced at him. "Good." He smiled faintly. "Fair." Miles, sitting behind them, whispered, "This is the hottest accountability I've ever witnessed." Sienna elbowed him. Enzo started sending food, but not extravagant meals, simple things she liked. He remembered she hated strong garlic. He remembered she loved cold fruit. He remembered the tea she drank when she couldn't sleep. Those details were the danger, because they were personal, because they meant he had always known her. He'd just stopped acting like it mattered. One evening, after a class, Sienna found herself in his car. Not because he demanded it, because it was raining hard. and he held the umbrella over her like she was precious, like the world couldn't touch her without his permission. She hated that it made her feel safe. Enzo drove quietly, hands steady on the wheel. The city lights blurred on the wet windshield. Miles had insisted on coming too, sitting in the back like a chaperone with opinions. "If you try anything romantic, I will cough loudly," he announced. Enzo didn't even look back. "I respect your cough." Miles nodded. "Good." At a red light, Enzo glanced at Sienna. "Are you okay?" She hesitated. "I don't know what okay is anymore." Enzo's voice softened. "Then we'll define it slowly." Sienna's heart thudded. Miles made a quiet, gagging noise. "Stop being tender in traffic." Enzo's mouth twitched. "No." Sienna's lips parted in surprise, then she laughed. Short and genuine. Enzo looked at her like the sound was oxygen. The first time Enzo kissed her again, it wasn't planned. It happened in her kitchen. Miles had stepped out to take a call. Sienna was putting away groceries, moving carefully, when Enzo reached up to take a bag from her hand. "Let me," he said. "I can do it." "I know," he replied. "Let me anyway." Sienna looked up at him, irritation and gratitude tangling inside her. Enzo's eyes dropped to her lips, then lifted again as if he'd caught himself wanting too much. He didn't move. He waited. That patience snapped something in her. Sienna stepped closer first. One step, then another, until her chest brushed his. She could feel his breath change. His hands stayed at his sides like he was afraid to touch without permission. Sienna whispered, "No pressure, remember?" Enzo's voice was barely there. "Always." She kissed him. It was soft at first. Careful, like they were learning each other again. Then it deepened, warm and familiar, and Sienna felt the ache of what they'd lost and the heat of what still lived between them. Enzo's hands rose slowly, hovering near her waist. Sienna nodded once. He touched her like she was something he'd prayed to get back, gentle, steady, not taking, just holding. When they separated, Sienna's breath shook. Enzo rested his forehead lightly against hers. "I love you," he whispered, and then he stopped himself. Like he realized it sounded like pressure, so he added quickly, softer, "I'm not asking you to say it back." Sienna's chest tightened. "Enzo." He pulled back, watching her face. "Tell me if I'm moving too fast." Sienna swallowed, fighting the fear. "You're close to the line." Enzo nodded immediately. "Then I stop." And he did. That control, used for tenderness, made her heart stutter. 2 days later, the tension came from an unexpected place. Sienna and Miles were at the mall again, same bright corridor, same ordinary noise, when Enzo appeared, not alone. With him was an older woman in a tailored coat, elegant and sharp-eyed, the kind of person who didn't need to raise her voice to cut. Sienna's stomach tightened. Miles leaned in, whispering, "Oh, that's a I disapprove face. I know that face." Enzo approached slowly, hands visible, posture respectful. "Sienna." "I didn't plan to run into you." Sienna's eyes narrowed slightly. "But you brought someone." Enzo glanced at the woman, then back to Sienna. "She asked to meet you." The woman's gaze moved to Sienna's belly, then back to her face. "So it's true." Miles stepped forward. "Hi, I'm Miles, the gay friend, the gatekeeper of peace." The woman blinked, unimpressed. "How modern." Miles smiled brightly. "Thank you." Sienna's pulse pounded. Enzo's voice stayed calm, but there was tension in his shoulders. "I told her this is your space. If you want to leave, we leave." Sienna studied him, searching for the old Enzo who would have decided for her. He wasn't doing that. The woman's eyes sharpened. "Enzo, you divorced her." Enzo didn't look away from Sienna when he answered. "I made a mistake." Sienna's breath caught. Miles whispered, "Oh, wow." In public, bold. The woman's gaze narrowed. "And now you want her back because there's a baby?" Enzo's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "I want her back because I love her." The baby makes my responsibility undeniable. My love was always there. Sienna's chest tightened. The words were beautiful, dangerously so. The woman turned to Sienna. And you? Are you going to fall for him again? Sienna's throat tightened. Miles leaned in, whispering, "Say something powerful, like I own a stapler and I'm not afraid to use it." Sienna almost laughed, but the tension was real. People were starting to glance. Enzo's eyes held hers, silent question. "Do you want out?" Sienna took a slow breath, then said calmly to the woman, "I'm not falling for anyone. I'm choosing what feels safe for me and my child." The woman's lips pressed thin. "And is he safe?" Enzo answered before Sienna could. "I will be." The woman studied him, then Sienna, then the belly again. "We'll see." She turned and walked away, leaving a trail of tension behind her like expensive perfume. Miles exhaled loudly. "Okay." "That was a villain cameo." Sienna's hands shook slightly. Enzo stepped closer, careful. "I'm sorry," Sienna whispered. "Why did you bring her?" "I didn't," Enzo said quickly. "She followed me here, but I should have stopped it." Sienna's eyes lifted. "You said you won't let anyone invade my life." Enzo swallowed. "You're right." He looked at her, steady and serious. "Tell me what you need from me right now." Sienna's heart pounded, because she knew what she needed. She needed reassurance. She needed to know he'd choose her publicly when it mattered. Sienna held his gaze and said quietly, "Prove you can protect my peace, even from your world." Enzo nodded once, jaw set. "I will." And as they stood there in the same mall where everything had exploded weeks ago, Sienna realized something terrifying. If Enzo truly fought for her the right way, she might actually let him back in. But was she ready to risk her heart again, right when it mattered most? Enzo didn't wait for another crisis to prove it. The next morning, Sienna woke to a single message. "Coffee at 10, your favorite place. Miles invited. No surprises." She stared at the screen, then at her belly, then at the sunlight creeping across the floor. For the first time in months, her chest didn't tighten with dread. It tightened with something warmer. The cafe was bright, calm, full of normal people doing normal things. That was the point. Enzo arrived first and stood when she walked in, not towering, not claiming, just present. Miles slid in beside Sienna like a guard dog in designer sunglasses. Enzo pushed a small envelope across the table. "I made arrangements." Sienna didn't touch it. "For what?" "For boundaries," Enzo said. "A new home for you, only if you want it. In your name. No cameras, no staff. No one from my side allowed without your approval." Miles blinked. "Okay. That's actually respectful." Sienna studied Enzo. "And the catch?" "No catch," he said. "If you say no, it disappears." Sienna's throat tightened. "Why?" Enzo's gaze held hers. "Because you asked me to protect your peace. That starts with giving you control." Miles nodded, quietly impressed. Sienna finally opened the envelope. Inside was a simple list, the address, the legal contact, and one line in Enzo's handwriting. "You choose. I follow." Her eyes stung, but she forced her voice steady. "This doesn't buy forgiveness." Enzo nodded. "I'm not trying to buy anything." Miles cleared his throat. "He's learning. I hate it." Sienna's lips twitched. That afternoon, Enzo did the harder thing. He met his mother. Not in a mansion, not behind closed doors. In a quiet restaurant where Sienna could leave whenever she wanted. Miles came too, because of course he did. Enzo's mother arrived with the same sharp elegance as before, eyes sweeping Sienna's belly like it was evidence. Enzo stood between them, not physically blocking, but clearly positioned. "This is Sienna," Enzo said calmly. "And this is my child." His mother's chin lifted. "You already divorced her." Enzo didn't flinch. "And I was wrong." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to pretend?" "No," Enzo said, voice steady. "I expect you to respect her. If you can't, you won't be in our lives." Miles's mouth fell open. "Oh my God." Sienna's breath caught. She'd never heard Enzo draw a line with his mother, not once. The older woman studied him, then Sienna, then the curve of her belly again. Her pride fought her expression. Finally she spoke, clipped. What does she want? Sienna blinked. Excuse me. Enzo turned to Sienna, softer. Tell her. What do you want? Sienna's heart pounded. She wasn't used to being offered the center of the room. She chose her words carefully. I want peace. I want kindness. I want my child to grow up surrounded by love, not control. Enzo's mother held her gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once, stiff but real. Then you will have it. Miles leaned in and whispered. That was almost human. Sienna shot him a look, but her lips trembled with a smile she couldn't stop. That night, Sienna let Enzo stay for dinner. Not as a husband, not as a savior, as a man trying. They ate on her couch with a movie playing low. Miles sprawled on the other end, commenting like it was a sports match. When Miles finally left, he pointed at Enzo. No speeches, no pressure. Don't ruin it. Enzo nodded. I won't. The door closed. Quiet settled. Sienna stood at the sink, rinsing dishes slowly. Enzo came behind her, close, but not touching. You're tired, he said. I'm fine. Enzo's voice softened. You don't have to be fine with me. Sienna's throat tightened. She turned, and he was right there, so close she could feel his warmth, his restraint. I'm scared, she admitted. Enzo's eyes darkened with tenderness. Of me? Of wanting you, she whispered, and losing myself again. Enzo shook his head once, slow. You won't lose yourself. If you ever feel that happening, you tell me, and I step back. Sienna studied him. You'd actually step back. Yes, he said. Because this time I'm not trying to own love. I'm trying to deserve it. Her chest tightened. The honesty was almost too much. Enzo hesitated, then asked quietly, May I hold you? Sienna nodded. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, as if she was something precious and breakable. Sienna let her head rest against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, human, warm. For a moment, the past faded. Only this remained. Then the baby kicked, firm and unmistakable. Enzo's hand slid to her belly and he laughed, soft, stunned, full of joy. He's impatient. Sienna smiled into his shirt. Like you. Enzo kissed her hair. I missed you. Sienna pulled back enough to look at him. Don't ruin this. I won't, he promised. She kissed him first this time. Slow, certain. Enzo responded like gratitude, not hunger. When the kiss deepened, it stayed gentle, full of warmth and familiarity. They moved to the couch, fingers intertwined, breath slowing together. Enzo's hand stayed over her belly like a vow. Sienna whispered, If we do this, we do it right. Enzo's forehead touched hers. We will. And in the quiet glow of her living room, no guards, no power games, no fear, Sienna finally felt it. Not the old love that hurt, the new love that chose. Enzo looked at her, voice low. Marry me again. When you're ready. Sienna's heart thudded. She didn't answer with a yes. She answered with the truth that mattered most. I'm not running anymore. Enzo's eyes closed, relief breaking through his control. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, their story finally did too. Forward, steady, and real.